Today's society, a lot of people treat their romantic relationships basically like a marriage. All right. I'm not here to discuss whether that's right or wrong. I'm here to just point that out. It happens a lot. All right. The lines are getting blurred and people are doing things that once upon a time was only reserved for when we are married. And one of those things, one of those common things is moving in together. All right. But in today's video, I want to really highlight specifically the man moving in with the woman. But let me continue. So this is happening a lot more. You know, some people have their spiritual beliefs about it as far as it being shacking up and stuff like that, which I'll get into a little bit later in the video. But at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot of differing opinions as to whether this is actually a good thing or not. Does this work? How effective is it? So on and so forth. And I want to lay out for you why you should never, and I don't want to ever say never, because there's always exceptions to the rule, right? And you just shouldn't say never. Never say never. But in the vast majority of cases, you should not allow any man to move in with you. Now, one of the big reasons right off the bat why you should not do this is because it will create, or it can create, an unhealthy financial attachment. So essentially, what I have seen happen in so many relationships is where two people move in together, or they let that man move in the house. And now, because let's say, for example, their names are on the lease, and let's say 6 months or 7 months into the relationship, they're having huge conflict and they're realizing this can't work. The problem is, though, they can't easily move on because both names are on the lease. You don't want to kick the man out because then he won't pay his half or whatever he's paying for the rent. And so now you're stuck. You're literally stuck having to deal with this dude for 5 more months, right? Until the lease is finally done. But here's the crazy part. In that 5 more months, you'll have a scenario where they think they can reconcile. Maybe they have a good moment. So now, or they weren't prepared for what the next step would be. So now they end up re-signing another lease, only to still be in turmoil in the second round of this lease. But again, feel stuck because of the financial ramifications of trying to break the lease. But let's go even further than that. What a lot of people don't realize is some individuals, if not both individuals, are now trying to make the relationship work, not because out of genuine love, connection, a real ability to find harmony with each other. It's because they can't actually financially handle living by themselves. Like literally at this point, because they've created this life based off of living together and allowing this man into your home, they now are finding themselves in a situation where they can't afford to allow him to move out, the woman specifically. Or the man can't afford to live on his own. So now his efforts to quote unquote make it work are just because he ain't trying to be out in the streets. Like it's what some people call homosexuals. Shout out to R.C. Blakes. I think he got a video on that, right? And so it's like you're now missing the fact that this whole thing is being built on a financial need, not a genuine love for each other. All right. Let's go even further. I've seen situations where the woman is done. The woman can handle the finances by herself. So she does not need the man there anymore and realizes this is not the man for her. But now out of guilt and sympathy for him, because he can't handle being out by himself, or he has nowhere to go, or what is he going to do? She lets him stay. Even in situations where this man is wreaking havoc, where this man is dealing with other women, I've seen it all. But because she feels like, well, I can't put him out on the streets, he'll have nowhere else to go, she lets him stay. I can go on and on and on and on. The bottom line is, this dynamic creates an unhealthy financial attachment. And so I will say this. The one caveat, you got to have, if you're going to cross the line and let a man move in with you, is you've got to have very strict parameters and deadlines. Meaning, okay, if we know that we're not seeing enough to take it to the next level of marriage, assuming that this moving in is happening, of course, before marriage, because I will make a point about letting him move in with you even after you get married. But if you guys realize this isn't going to go to that level, like we have to agree after 6 months, if it's possible, then we terminate lease or whatever, or if it's a year. But there has to be a set deadline and structure. Again, I still don't necessarily advise this. I'm just saying for those who insist, because some people just really believe you got to live together to get to know each other well enough. I don't agree, and I'll explain more later. But you got to have structure in the deadline. But ultimately, you got to be very careful, and you've got to also make sure there is an exit strategy, okay? It's not that we want to plan for a breakup or plan for disaster, but creating these types of financial attachments because we have not thought of how we would have to break free from this if this does not go well, it just creates a deeper hole and a more miserable situation. So you want to make sure you know, okay, if this does not work, either he has somewhere to go or I have to be prepared to put him out without the guilt of I'm putting him out. You can't let that hold you in place here. That's just not good for you, not good for him. And you got to also be sure, because this is hitting my spirit, you got to be sure you're not hiding behind the guilt and sympathy when in reality you just don't want to be alone. When in reality, you got comfortable with having a man in your bed and in your home. So now you're using that sympathy as an excuse to validate letting this joker linger way longer than he should. All right. You got to be real with yourself about why you're holding on. But either way, be careful, because this is what moving in or letting him move in with you can create. All right. So now let's get to the next point. The next reason why you should not allow any man to move in with you is because there's a very good chance you're going to start to lose respect for him. All right. So this is more speaking to directly the dynamic of you have your place and he's coming to you. Now, let's be real. In the vast majority of situations where the man has to move in with the woman, it is because the woman is more established, more well set up, and the man is still trying to find himself and make things happen. All right. Now, I'm not demonizing the fact that he's in that position. What I am saying is this. If we're already starting from a dynamic where he has to work his way up and you're already at a higher level, the problem now is, one, once he is in the comfort of your home, it is very easy for him to get comfortable. It is very easy for him to lose the motivation to push harder to get his stuff together, because now he got a warm bed, he got a woman by his side. For all we know, you making him food and you doing whatever else for him. He's getting regular sex, okay? Those comforts are going to de-incentivize a lot of men from pushing harder, because the reality is that many men push hard, try to strive for more, so that they can gain the favor of a woman. When he's already getting it, what else is there for him to do? So that's one, he can get very comfortable. Two, if he's already starting from that quote unquote lower level and you're higher, even if he gets himself to a better place, is it the place high enough for you to respect? All right? Because in your head, you know, it's always going to be harder for an individual to have the same amount of reverence and respect for someone who is not working as hard to achieve what they have achieved. All right, I hope I'm saying that right. So essentially, it's like, listen, when we're all struggling, we more sympathize with the struggle, right? But when we ourselves have moved past that struggle by putting in the hard work, persevering, all that stuff, we tend to now have less patience for someone else who we view as giving excuses. Okay? It's one thing when just hard times is falling on them, things that are against their control. I think we all understand that. But now when we start to see a pattern of, no, you're just not putting in the work. Okay? now that respect starts to slide. Now that resentment starts to kick in. Because now it's not only is he working, but in your eyes, is he working hard enough? Is he doing enough to what you feel is his potential to do? If he's not living up to that potential, again, you will start to look down on him. Or you may start to look down on him. Many do. And so again, now, if he does not work himself up to the level that you can revere, we got a big problem on our hands. Then you add that to the fact that if getting to the level that you desire for him is too difficult in his eyes, and we combine that with he has the comforts of being in your home and all these things, well, even if he was initially willing to strive for it, now he's like, the trade-off ain't worth it. I might as well just kick back a little bit and just enjoy the situation I'm in right now. And again, you will find yourself having less respect for this man. And because this is your home, this is your castle that you built, you're not going to have the same, like, he's the head of the household type of mentality. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one thing when it's his house, you know, or a house that even you guys got together or rented out together, whatever. But when it's all you, and he came into your spot, again, not all women, but many women start to view that man as an additional child or their only child if they don't have others. All right? He's your son now. And that's not a good place to be, you know, because now that snowballs into other kind of conflict in the relationship, you know, other toxic energy, and it just gets worse from there. And then the whole thing blows up. And then we're back to now the dynamic of maybe you having a hard time kicking them out, the financial attachment, all these things. So either way, loss of respect is definitely a common issue that comes up when the man or the woman has allowed the man to move in with her. All right, so now just keep it moving. Next reason why you should never allow any man to move in with you is because it can delay a marriage commitment. So remember how I started this video. A lot of people are pretty much, they treat relationships as basically a trial marriage. All right. In some cases, a full-blown marriage, to be honest. And so if the desire is for that next level of security and commitment for him to marry you, and most people would argue, well, yeah, you know, we're moving in to make sure that this is what we want with each other and we can spend our lives with each other. Okay, but in a lot of cases, you will actually delay it because once again, he's already getting all the benefits without the added commitment. You got to take a very logical approach for a second. And when we're talking about how men are viewing it, okay? Once upon a time, marriage was the gateway to gaining all these benefits. A woman who's there consistently, consistent intimacy, a homemaker, someone who can raise your kids, all these things. Once upon a time, you pretty much had to get married to get that. Plain and simple. And that was the motivation for men to build themselves up and to actually commit and get married. By removing that requirement and still providing those benefits, it at the very least hinders or causes great hesitation in a man to get married, because now it's like, I'm getting all of this already and I don't have to now sign on any dotted line and now be in a position where I can't easily walk away if I one day choose to, or I don't have to now worry about the financial ramifications that come with getting married. And if one day there's a possible divorce and all the horror stories these men are hearing about nowadays, unfortunately, right? So to him, it's like, okay, if I can, at the very least, if I can hold off on this, let me hold off. There's no reason for me to rush and make a decision. Everything's great right now as far as he's concerned. But you are feeling iffy because you are not getting that next level of security and commitment that you may desire in this situation. This is again why we have to go back to, if you are going to cross this line, there has to be a deadline. There has to be structure. It has to be, okay, if again, I repeat, I am not advising that this is the way to do it in general. I'm just saying if you're going to do it, consider these things. If you insist on the idea that we must live together first to really learn each other before we can make the decision of marriage, that's your choice as a grown adult. But again, there has to be okay, if after 6 months of living together, we are not confident about getting married, we got to end it right there. And to be quite honest with you, I think one of the things that people aren't grasping or accepting if they make that kind of an agreement is, if after 6 months, or let's say a year, whatever you two decide, you guys are not confident about moving forward and being married to each other, and now you've had the test run of living together, at that point, the relationship is done. Like, it doesn't make sense to now think, oh, well, if we can't work this out for marriage, we'll just go back to staying as girlfriend. For what? We've explored everything. We tried it out. If it's still not working, there's nothing else to do. And if we could not get it together while being under the same roof for the last X amount of time, what are we expecting to change after that? It's a harsh reality that many don't want to face, and I think that's why many don't put a deadline or structure on it, because they don't want to deal with well, maybe this actually won't work out, okay? But you're only going to make things worse for yourself if you don't do that. So you need to, I implore you, you've got to set that deadline, and you got to be very honest about what you desire. If you want marriage, make that clear to that man. Don't play that game and act like you don't care about it or it's no big deal when it is a big deal for you. And there's nothing wrong with it being a big deal for you. You got to stick to what you value and what you need and desire in your life. All right, so now here's another, definitely, I kind of alluded to it already, but we'll discuss it again. Another thing that happens, or another reason why you should never allow a man to move in with you, is because you could very easily enable his laziness. So again, it goes back to the fact that a lot of men are only going to do what they have to do to get what they desire. Okay? If they can do the bare minimum and still get everything, many, not all, but many will stop right there. I think some of you think, well, okay, if he's serious, he'll push and do more. No, no. Again, men are pretty much, all right, if this can get me that, and I'm good with that, that's it. This above and beyond for what? Even in life in general, you have to understand, I'm a believer, this is my personal belief, that the vast majority of men are just looking to live comfortable. They don't have a mentality of, I gotta do more. That's not even how they're wired. They just want to do enough to be comfortable and content. And anything more is viewed as unnecessary to them. All right. Whereas there are a segment of men, which I believe is a much smaller segment of men, who are simply wired to do more. So they naturally go above and beyond, because that's just how they strive for more. They're highly ambitious men. They're super go-getters. There's other drawbacks to those men, I'm not going to lie. Like, some can tend to be workaholics. But that's how they're wired. Anyways, back to the average man, so to speak. That letting him move in is just going to stunt his growth pretty much. And let me be more specific with that. If you let him move in with you before he has established himself, before he has developed the work ethic in his life to get things done and do what needs to be done, then yes, you will stunt his growth. So the key is, it's one thing to let a man move in when he has already established himself, versus you're letting a man move in while he's still either working on himself or he's just not there. And the reality is that if he's a man who has established himself, then it is most likely the conversation will not be about him moving in with you, but about you moving in with him, or you two moving in together into a new place. All right? Now, if there is a exception to where he's an established man, but let's say your home is in a more desirable area, or it's a more convenient situation for the both of you, there's nothing wrong with that. And again, that's why there's exceptions to every single rule. So I don't think that's a guy we have to worry about falling off in that scenario. But when he has not gotten himself together yet, which again, in most cases, the man who moves in with you, that's what it is. Yeah, it's going to stop him from becoming what he needs to become. So better to wait longer, so to speak, even if your desire is to eventually move in together, better to at least wait and say, give this man some more time to establish himself before we then take that next step of moving in. And real quick, before I move on to the next point, let me give you a couple indicators that he's not ready yet. He's not established enough, all right? Number one, if you have to stay on top of him constantly to get things done, then he's not ready yet. So essentially, he has to be at a certain level of self-motivated. It's one thing for you to be his supporter. It's another thing for you to be the one who's guiding and teaching him, all right? Or who's pushing him, and more specifically, pulling him. If you are constantly pulling him and you got to be the one to get him to do stuff and he's not taking any initiative on his own, then he's not ready yet. A second thing, and I don't want to be unfair with this, but it is what comes to mind. If there's always constantly some issue that he's dealing with, right? That to me, at the very least, is a red flag. And here's the reason why I say that. I tend to find that when people constantly have an issue, constantly have to borrow money, constantly something is going wrong, it's because they're being irresponsible in their life. Or at the very least, they're not being as on top of things as they need to be in their life. Don't get me wrong. I think we all have been through seasons of things just going wrong. And there's nothing we can do, right? It's out of our control. And I think that's the key point to it. Is like, pay attention. Are these things really out of his control that are happening? Or things where had he done what he's supposed to do, we wouldn't be at this position right now? Because now it's not just an indicator of his lack of growth, but God forbid you let this man move in, you give him responsibility, and now he repeats those patterns of not being on top of things. And now he sets you behind and creates dilemmas for you. He passes on that chaotic energy to you. That's not going to be good. So I think those are two things to at least pay attention to that kind of tell you, like, he's not ready yet. You know what I'm saying? All right, before I give you the next point, be sure to take advantage of joining my special coaching program, which is just go to receivingmyblessings.com, all right? It's going to teach you how to tap into feminine energy, hear God, meet relationship-minded men. We do live Q&As where I answer your personal questions. It's an amazing experience that you're going to learn a lot from, and you're going to enjoy and be in a group of other women who are on the same page, on the same journey, supporting each other. So again, click the link in the description or in the comment section, or go to receivingmyblessings.com. All right, so now here's another big one, and this will only apply to some people. Another reason why you never allow any man to move in with you is because it can have a very negative impact on the kids. So of course, this is only applicable if kids are involved, right? And you know, some of you might be saying, oh, hell no, like, why is a man moving in some woman's house who got kids and that's not his kids? Number one, it happens. It happens all the time, you know, and we're not here to judge. We're here to talk about it and help and encourage the best approach, or the most effective approach, the healthiest approach possible. And so here's my thing. Let me first start by saying this. I know there's some people that believe that you got to make a man meet your kids as soon as possible in the dating process to determine if they're really someone you can be with. I don't agree with that. I believe in you need to first, as an adult, do your own vetting process. Ensure that this is the man you want to be with, that you two are on the same page and now ready to move to the next level, at least in a committed relationship, and then he can meet the kids. All right? The kids are not there to choose your partner. That should not be put on them. The kids cannot be trusted. I think people really think like, oh, well, the kids can see certain things. Yes, but the kids can also choose from a very biased perspective, all right? one guy gives them toys or something and now they love them, and the other guy is more of a disciplinarian, not because he doesn't have love for your children, but that's just, he understands they need proper guidance, and they might say, no, I want the easygoing toy guy. You know what I'm saying? Not the other guy who's going to actually be a real father in life, not just buy toys all day. You know, one maybe just trying to win them over. The other one's trying to provide love through guidance and proper support. Anyways, the point is, you can't rely on them. I've also seen situations where the kids would shoot down good people because they were still holding on to hope that you would get back with their biological father. All right. This topic needs a whole different video. So let me just continue. The point is, when kids are involved, whether it be his kids, your kids, whatever, you're now taking the chance of creating such an attachment that now, remember how earlier it was the financial aspect that made it hard for a woman to let that man go, kick him out, whatever. Now it's my kids love him, you know, or he helps with the kids in a way that you've gotten comfortable with and you don't want to let go of that help. There's so many different ways that it can create attachment. He can guilt you. I've seen men where, you know, don't take me away from the child. I love the kids, boom, boom, boom. And I'm not saying the guy was never genuine, but again, you should not be letting a man stay out of guilt when you know he's not the best man for you. That's not going to be good for you, and that's not going to be good for the kids in the long run. Because if he's not the man for you, then inevitably he's going to end up leaving at some point. Better to do it now than to let this linger longer. All right? It's not going to magically turn around and work itself out in a lot of these cases. Okay? So you just got to be careful of what you're setting up here. And that's why I think when there's kids involved, I would say you don't move in unless there's an engagement in place. That would be my opinion. I'm not going to say that that's the only way it can work. Again, there's other exceptions to the rule, but I would think at the very least you want an engagement involved. You want to make sure you two are at that level of, even though anytime people can break up, things cannot work out, you at least want to have a confidence that we have a strong enough foundation that we know we're trying to move in this more deeper committed direction. You know what I'm saying? I think at the least that's what we want to aim for when kids are involved. All right, so we got another one. And another reason why you never let any man move in with you is because you can make it a lot easier for a man to use you. All right? So, again, let me start with the good. Let me start with the nicer side. There's some situations where a man's moved in with a woman and he moved in being a provider, meaning he moved in trying to help with bills or pay the bills. He moved in, you know, holding things down in the household. That can happen. And if that happens again, I'm not knocking a man doing that. However, I would argue in the majority of situations that the man moved in, right? And we're talking more so in the dating process, it was a man leeching off the woman. It was a man taking advantage of the situation. It was a man who needed those resources and saw an opportunity and jumped on it. And a woman who may sometimes not have realized that she allowed it, because again, she was afraid that maybe if she didn't, this man would not be with her anymore. She wanted somebody close by. You know, she doesn't like being alone. There's various reasons why a woman may allow it when it's a situation that the man is really just using you. And so the clearest way to understand if he's using you is kind of going back to my initial example of, is he coming in and still providing? And let me make clear, when I say provide, I don't believe that providing has to only be financial. Though I am a huge supporter, cheerleader, whatever you want to call it, of a man being a protective provider. And, you know, I'm not a fan of 50-50. I believe in that man taking more of the financial burden. But I do understand that different strokes for different folks and different situations may require a different dynamic. I get that. But at the very least, if he's not financially providing? Is he providing in other ways? Is he removing burden from you? All right. Is he becoming an asset, or has he moved in and become a liability? Did you gain a man, or did you gain another child? All right. That's how you have to evaluate it. And you got to understand that the man who is there to use you, when you now come to the realization that this is not working, he's not doing his part, don't expect him to go down easily. Like, if you think it's going to be like, well, he's clearly not serious about me, why he can't just leave me alone? Because he got nowhere else to go. Or it's just easier to stay with you. Or you're paying the bill. I cannot tell y'all. Let me tell you something. A lot of women, and this is not to shame anybody, this is just to point out the reality. A lot of women online to their friends, to their family, will say things like, I'll never let no man use me, or some man, some broke man live in my house while I'm paying the bills, all that tough talk. But I cannot tell you how many women have found themselves in that situation and are currently still in that situation. I can't tell you how many situations where there are couples, they come into mind right now, I will never tell you who they are, but there are couples where you'll look at them, you will think that the man is either providing or at the very least holding his own. And the whole time it's the woman supporting him. It's the woman taking care of everything for him. All right. And again, going back to the unhealthy financial attachment, feeling this guilt of I can't put him out. He has nowhere else to go and the world doesn't know. And if this woman has sold to her friends and family that this man is doing her part, it becomes very embarrassing and difficult to have to now admit to people that that's not the case. So instead, the hole gets dug even deeper, and the facade, she tries to keep it up, but all it's doing is draining her. All right? So all that to say, like, it's a very, you got to make sure that if you're going to let that man move in with you, that one, he is going to come in with the understanding of doing his part, and that you both, and you have to know this within yourself more importantly, that if he's not going to do his part, you've got to be prepared to let him go. You've got to be prepared to kick him out. You got to know, if you know that you cannot handle putting this man out on his behind, if he's not going to do his part, don't let him move in. Period. Plain and simple. I don't care what you think. If you know you don't have that in you, don't do it. If you're going to say, but I'm just too nice and I'm just so kind. Listen, number one, I always say, there's no such thing as too nice. You're just too afraid to say no. But regardless, if that's the way you view yourself, then that means you should not be crossing that line, because that will be an easy setup for you to get used. And the last point I'm going to make, though I feel like there's a lot more points for me to talk about, but here's one I just have to talk about. Why you should not allow a man to ever move in with you. And I'm going to make this statement, but let me explain. Because shacking up is a sin. Now, hold on now, because I say that, though that's actually not how I view it. What I mean by that is this. I only brought this up because people love using that point. That shacking up is a sin. That's why you should not move in together. From my perspective, so I'm not saying this is etched in stone and this is the end all be all, but from my perspective, we're looking at that wrong. Unless you can correct me, I have not found any scripture in the Bible that says moving in together is sin. What is the actual sin is premarital sex. What I find very interesting is that you'll have a couple who's already having premarital sex, and I ain't judging, I'm just pointing out the scenario, who's already having premarital sex. And then when they tell their people we want to move to get in together, the people's like, nah, it's a sin to shack up. They done passed the sin already. Like, it ain't no new sin. It ain't no extra sin. The sin is it's already done. And I just think it's important to make sure that when we talk about these things, we're being a little bit more precise and not throwing it, because I know the perception is, but if you live together, it's automatically viewed as you would have sex. Okay, but that doesn't mean that's what always happens. though I can never say 100%, I do know of some couples, one specifically, that actually live together, and at least to what they claim, they did not have sex while living together. So to me, technically, they did not commit sin because they did not have the sex. Okay? At the end of the day, I just think we're mashing up stuff and saying, okay, well, don't do this because it'll lead to this, but we're not looking at the actual root thing. I just wanted to point that out. Really, to be honest with you, I just wanted to point that out. And to me, it's like, listen, I think what I will add to this point is, whether it's sin, not sin, whatever your personal belief is, before you make a big decision like letting a man move in with you, pray about it. Now, some people may say, well, why are you going to pray about it if shacking is a sin? Listen, there's nothing you can't talk to God about. And don't, even if you say, but I already know it's okay, but then you'll just get that confirmation when you pray. There's nothing wrong with praying. Sometimes we might hear something, I don't want to say it like that because people might misconstrue. Just pray. Just pray and talk to God and ask God and let Him guide you in these situations so that you don't set yourself up for something that you don't belong in. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on 5 nice girl habits all women must break. Again, you have to ask yourself, why am I trying so hard to make it work with a man that I can't even be myself with?
Thank you.